Protesters blame China. China blames the West, and the U.S. in particular, for orchestrating the movement, they say. Who's really leading these protests, we asks. Here now, News with Rick Sanchez correspondent Michelle Greenstein.
Hong Kongers poured into the streets this summer, at first to oppose an extradition bill, but quickly morphing into a broad anti-China uprising. There seems to have been a conscious choice to brand this surge of protests as a leaderless movement. Yet there are certainly individuals, political parties, and organizations giving this movement its direction. And quite a number of the core opposition leaders have clear ties to a city 8,000 miles away, Washington, D.C. At the center of this controversy is a man named Jimmy Lai. His media company owns one of Hong Kong's most widely read papers, a right-wing tabloid called Apple Daily. Lai's influence on the zeitgeist in Hong Kong is unmistakable, but who is influencing him? As protests were heating up in July, Lai went to D.C. and met with U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton. He was also hosted by the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, a neoconservative think tank that hosts a board of advisors that include 2 former CIA directors. In August, Lai was seen in Hong Kong meeting with Christian Whiten, who worked at the State Department under both the Bush and Trump administrations. Here's Whiten on a podcast later that month.
Causing this crisis for the Chinese Communist Party, for the government, at a time when we're, frankly, at a difficult point in negotiations. This is good for U.S. national interest.
Also present at this meeting was Mark Simon, Jimmy Lai's so-called right-hand man, with ties to the CIA, although he says those days are behind him. Another curious figure in this anti-government movement is Martin Lee, who was present at the August meeting as well. He is the founding chairman of Hong Kong's Democratic Party, a party that some members of the Hong Kong government call anti-China.
Their policy basically is anti-China, and they do things which are really hurtful to the overall public interest of Hong Kong.
I spoke with another founding member and the former vice chair of this party, who left because of its unwillingness to even talk to Beijing.
My understanding, dialogue is very important. I understand we need to talk with the Beijing or the SAR government, but they were fighting, just only fighting.
Lee's connections to Washington go back decades, and as the current protest movement was heating up, Lee too took a trip to Washington and met with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Lee is the recipient of a number of awards from U.S. institutions, including a 1997 Democracy Award from the National Endowment for Democracy. Although the NED is technically an NGO, it has received millions of dollars from the U.S. State Department. And critics of the NED point to the fact that one of its former presidents said it was created to continue the work of the CIA without the CIA's stigma.
It would be terrible for democratic groups around the world to be seen as subsidized by the CIA. We saw that in the 60s, and that's why it has been discontinued. That's why the endowment was created.
I asked Lee about his party's alleged ties to the United States government.
We have been very careful. We don't take overseas donations because that's not allowed with any foreign political party or political group.
It may be illegal for a party to take money from a foreign government, but from a foreign NGO, that's another story.